Hello everyone, this is Vivek. Welcome to LUCID Study. The first chapter when we talk about that we are going to discuss in the 10th class is India and its relief features. భారతదేశం అలానే దాని భౌగోళిక స్వరూపాలు. What do you mean by these relief features? Have you ever visited a hill station? Have you ever heard of Himalayas? Have you ever heard of plains? Have you ever heard of Deccan Plateau? What are all these? Mountains, plateaus, plains, deltas, basins, rivers, coastal plains, valleys, and different landforms that we have. What are all these? Well, these are nothing but the relief features. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in this particular chapter. What is the chapter? India and its relief features. Before going into the details of the chapter, we need to know where is the location of India. భారతదేశం ఎక్కడుంది? Depending on that, we can get to know what are the different relief features that we have. As we all know, the climate of a particular place or the different landforms that we have, they all are dependent on the location of the particular place. Like when you talk about India's location, it is in the northern hemisphere. It is above the equator. It is in the northern hemisphere. And when you talk about where in northern hemisphere, it lies in the southern part of the northern hemisphere. And at the same time, when you talk about what are the different latitudes, what are the different longitudes that pass through India, and what are the important latitudes and longitudes that we have that we need to remember, that we can't forget, because they play a very important role that we need to understand. And we will talk about all those things in detail in this particular chapter. So without any further delay, we will dive deep into these relief features and let's find out what are the different relief features that we have in India and relief features, whether it might be the mountains, whether it might be the plateaus or plains, or whether it might be islands or peninsula or some other landforms or relief features that we have. Here is a world map where you can see it clearly, right? It's a globe which gives an indication like what are the different countries, what are the different continents, what are the different oceans that we have in this world. But why are we saying this? What is the importance of looking at this globe or the map that we have in front of us? The reason is we need to know the location of India, as we have already got to know that India lies in northern hemisphere. But how did you get to know that India lies in the northern hemisphere, the northern part of the earth? We got to know that by this dotted line that we have over here, the 0 degree line. What do you mean by the 0 degree line? The 0 degree latitude. Remember, latitudes are the horizontal lines and longitudes are the vertical lines, and both latitudes and longitudes are the imaginary lines. అవి రియల్గా ఎక్కడ లేవు. దే ఆర్ సంథింగ్ విచ్ వీ హ్యావ్ ఇమాజిన్ దట్ దే ఆర్ దేర్. ఈక్వేటర్, ఇట్ ఈస్ అ లాటిట్యూడ్ at 0 degrees which divides earth equally into two parts. And what are those two parts? One is northern hemisphere and one is southern hemisphere. So which divides northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere? It is the equator, which is 0 degrees. And here it is shown by the black dotted lines. And then what is this vertical dotted line that we have over here? This one. What is this called? As we remember, the horizontal lines are the latitudes, the vertical lines, niluga unnavi, they are called the longitudes. So this is the 0 degree longitude, or else you can say the prime meridian or the Greenwich meridian that we have on earth. That is nothing but this longitude. Now what is the importance of having this longitude? We know that equator, which is the 0 degree latitude, it has divided earth into two equal parts or two different parts. One is the northern hemisphere and one is the southern hemisphere. In the same way, remember, in the same way, there is this prime meridian or Greenwich meridian which has divided our earth into eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So when you look at the location or where the India is located on the world map, it is in the northern hemisphere. You can see that the yellow color part that you can see on this particular map is nothing but our country India, which is completely lying in the northern hemisphere, which is completely above the equator. And if you talk about where in northern hemisphere, you can say it is in the southern part of the northern hemisphere. And at the same time, it is in the eastern hemisphere, as we got to know this prime meridian which divides the world or globe into eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. India lies in the eastern hemisphere. So it is in the northern hemisphere, it is in the eastern hemisphere as well. So now what do you call it? India lies in the northeastern part or northeastern quarter part of the globe or the world. And at the same time, there are few other important things that we need to remember, that we need to understand when you talk about the globe, or else when you talk about the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. What are those important things? Well, just looking at the map, we can say majority of the land portion is in the northern part. Like ఎక్కువ శాతం భూమి ఎక్కడుంది అని అంటే, I know we call this whole thing as earth, but among that when we talk about the land part, it is completely in the northern hemisphere. and water is more in the southern hemisphere. And especially you can understand why is that. It is in the tropical region. Now, what do you mean by this tropical region? Well, if you remember, every hemisphere has been divided from 0 degrees to 90 degrees. So when you keep moving from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, in between you get some very distinctive regions. Like you get the tropical region, you get the temperate region, you get the polar region as well. But how can you distinguish all the three? So when you talk about tropical region, it is from 0 degrees to 23.5 degrees. భూమధ్య రేఖ ఈక్వేటర్ ఏదైతే ఉందో అక్కడి నుంచి 23.5 డిగ్రీలు ఉత్తర భాగం వైపు అలానే దక్షిణ భాగం వైపు కూడా this particular region is called the tropical region. And from 23.5 degrees both north and south to 66.5 degrees north and south is called the temperate region. And from 66.5 degrees both north and south directions to 90 degrees to the poles is called the polar regions. Why the name tropical region, temperate region, polar region? Because the climatic conditions of these distinctive regions is completely different. Like if you see over here in the map, India almost lies completely in the tropical region. Of course, some part of India, or else you can say half of the India is in the temperate region and the rest of the India is in the tropical region. But remember, tropical region is the place where you get the most rainfall, where you get the highest temperatures, right? ఎక్కడైతే ఉష్ణోగ్రతలు ఎక్కువ ఉంటాయో, ఎక్కడైతే ఎండ ఎక్కువగా వస్తుందో, ఎక్కడైతే వర్షం ఎక్కువగా పడుతుందో, those are the places where agriculture is done extensively, and those are the favorable climatic conditions for people to settle over there. And that's why majority of the population lives in tropical regions. And why are we talking about tropical regions in relief features? Because even climate also plays a very important role in relief features as well. And now if you look at this map, we can get to know the details of what is the exact location of India. Till now we have only discussed that India is in the northern hemisphere when you talk about the latitudinal aspect, and India is in the eastern hemisphere when you talk about the longitudinal aspect. But what exactly is the latitudinal and the longitudinal extent of India? What are the latitudes that touch the southernmost part of India, the northernmost part of India? What are the longitudes that touch the easternmost part of India on the westernmost part of India? And why are we getting to know this? Because if you remember in the previous classes that we have discussed, what is a grid? Grid is nothing but the network of latitudes and longitudes. And why do you use grid? Grid helps you to find out the exact location of a particular region, right? In the same way, if you know what are the exact latitudes and longitudes and what are the extent of it, you can get to know the exact location of where India is located on the world map or the globe. And when you talk about that, when you start with the latitudinal extent, in the south we have 8 degrees 4 minutes south latitude. And when you go to the north, the latitude that we have is 37 degrees 6 minutes north latitude. Remember, 8 degrees 4 minutes south latitude, 37 degrees 6 minutes north latitude. And when you talk about one very important latitude that passes through India at 23.5 degrees north, what is that? It is Tropic of Cancer. That is a very important latitude, as we already have discussed. Why? Because 0 degrees to 23.5 degrees is considered as a tropical region, and from 23.5 degrees to 66.5 degrees is considered as temperate region. Hence it becomes very important that you need to remember that there is this latitude 23.5 degrees north in particular, which is the Tropic of Cancer, which passes through India and almost makes 2 equal parts of India. And when you talk about the longitudinal aspect, when you talk about the easternmost extent of the longitude that we have, it is 97 degrees 25 minutes east longitude. And when you talk about the westernmost longitude of India, we have 68 degrees 7 minutes west. And on the eastern part of India, we have 97 degrees 25 minutes east longitude. Now you might have a doubt. Why is both are the things called east when we consider longitudes, and why both the latitudes are called north? Remember, India is on the northern side of the equator, so you are coming to the top from equator, and that's why both 8 degrees 4 minutes and 37 degrees 6 minutes are considered as north. And when you talk about the longitudes, if you remember that India lies in the eastern hemisphere. When you talk about the prime meridian, it is on the right side, it is on the eastern side. Hence we say that 97 degrees 25 minutes east and 68 degrees 7 minutes west. Now you might get the question, okay, now I got the exact latitudinal and the longitudinal extent of India. But what is the exact distance from the northernmost point to the southernmost point of India? What is the distance between the easternmost point to the westernmost part of India? What is the distance? When you talk about that, it is 2933 kilometers. How much? 2933 kilometers. That is the distance, or that is the extent between the easternmost part of India and the westernmost part of the India. What is the distance? 2933 kilometers. In the same way, when you talk about the northernmost part of the India and the southernmost part of the India, the distance that we have is 3214 kilometers. 3214 kilometers దూరం అన్నమాట. దేనికి? From the northernmost part of the India to the southernmost part of India. 2933 west to east, 3214 north to south. That is the distance. But if you remember, there is one more dotted line that is passing through India. As we know, this horizontal line which is passing is nothing but the 23.5 degree latitude, which is nothing but the Tropic of Cancer. Okay, no issues. Then what is this vertical dotted line that we have? What is it indicating? Well, this has a very interesting story. Keep watching, you'll get to know much more details about it. And what it is? If you remember the longitudinal extent, the easternmost longitude that India has is 97 degrees 25 minutes east. And when you talk about the westernmost longitude, or else when you talk about the western part of India, it is 68 degrees 7 minutes east longitude. Now, why are they very important? When you talk about time, samayam gurinchi manam maatladukunnappudu, it is indicated with the help of longitudes. మీకు ఒక భూమి మీద ఎక్కడైనా ఒక ప్రదేశంలో సమయం ఎంత అవుతుంది, వాట్ ఈస్ ద టైమ్, ఇఫ్ యూ హ్యావ్ టు నో, యూ నీడ్ టు హ్యావ్ ద లాంగిట్యూడ్స్, అండ్ దట్స్ హౌ యూ టెల్ ద టైమ్. But if you look at the longitudinal extent of India, one is 97 degrees 25 minutes east and one is 68 degrees 7 minutes east. There is almost a difference of 30 degrees, which gives a difference of 2 hours. What is this difference of 2 hours? Well, have you ever wondered, like when you make a call to a relative who is in some other country, like for example, if you take Ammi Ammamma garu ఎవరైనా ఒకవేళ అమెరికాలో ఉన్నారు అనుకోండి, for example, when you call in the morning, it is night for them. And when you call in the night, it's daytime for them. Why? Because if you remember, Earth rotates, right? And Earth doesn't stay at all places at all times. So he moves, the Earth keeps rotating, and that's why the time also changes. In the same way, when you talk about the longitudinal aspect of India, the sun rises in the east, that you remember, right? In the same way, the sun comes first on the eastern side. The sun comes first on 97 degrees 25 minutes east. And it almost takes 2 to 2.5 hours, or else you can say almost 2 to 4 hours range for sun to come from the easternmost part of India to the westernmost part of India. అంటే అతి తూర్పు వైపున ఉన్న ప్రదేశాలు, like you can say Imphal, which is in Manipur, or else if you talk about Itanagar in Arunachal Pradesh, they are having sunrise at much earlier time than the people in Gujarat are having the sunrise. వీళ్ళు నిద్ర లేచే సమయానికి వాళ్ళు నిద్ర లేచి ఆల్మోస్ట్ 2-3 గంటలు కూడా అయిపోతుంది అనమాట. And that is creating a lot of problems. Why? Because these people are 2 hours ahead of these people. Which means if it is 9 o'clock in the morning over here, it is 7 o'clock in the morning over here. Now that is causing some disturbances in the lives of the people. That's why there is this vertical line which has been made, and it plays a very important role. And what is that? It is nothing but the 82.5 degrees east longitude. What is that? 82.5 east degree longitude. Now what is this 82.5 degree east longitude? It is almost exactly in between 68 degrees 7 minutes east longitude and 97 degrees 25 minutes east longitude. Why? What is the importance of having this? It almost gives the equal time. మనం ఇందాక మాట్లాడుకున్నట్టుగా తూర్పు వైపు ఉన్నది 2 గంటలు ముందుగా ఉందన్నమాట. Now they are making sure, the government of India made sure that all over India the time is the same. Like for example, if I say the time is almost 2 o'clock right now, for example, which means whether it might be in Arunachal Pradesh, whether it might be in Tamil Nadu, whether it might be in Gujarat or Jammu Kashmir, wherever in India you are, the time is 2 o'clock. But previously, if I say for example, this particular place the time is 2 o'clock, here it would be 3 o'clock, here it would be 1 o'clock. And as we are talking about the relief features, we need to talk about something which is very important for India. And what is that? The coastline of India that we have. India has a great potential. India has a great coastline of almost 7,500 kilometers. 7,500 kilometerల తీర ప్రాంతం ఉంది భారతదేశానికి. That is very, very important for the business and the commercial activities, which helps a lot in the imports and the exports of the country, which helps a lot in the GDP of the country. And that's why it becomes very, very important, and it is very strategic as well for India when we talk about the neighboring countries and the defense aspect as well. India has 7,500 kilometers coastline. At the same time, whenever you have talked about India, you could have heard two things: Indian subcontinent and Indian peninsula. Now, what do you mean by this Indian subcontinent and Indian peninsula? Well, nothing to worry. I will tell you what are those. What is a continent? A continent is a huge landmass which has different climatic conditions, which has different landforms, which has different relief features, right? Like, for example, one place might be having an ocean, one place might be having a river, one place might be having a valley, one place might be having a mountain, one place might be having a forest, different, right? In the same way as how continent has different features, in the same way even India has the same sort of features. India is somewhat similar like a continent. That's why we call Indian subcontinent. Manu Bharatadeshanni oka upakhandanga pariganistamu. And why do we do that? If you look at India carefully, India has mountains. What mountains do we have in India? In the northern part of India, we have the Himalayas. And in the southern part, you have oceans. And when you have coastal plains as well, you have islands like Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep. You have plateaus like Deccan Plateau. You have plains like the Northern Plains. And that's how you have different land features. In fact, you also have a desert, Thar Desert. You have deserts, you have mountains, you have plateaus, you have plains, you have coastal plains, you have islands. Each and everything is there, which normally is a feature of a continent. ఒక ఖండంలో ఉండాల్సిన అన్ని లక్షణాలు మన భారతదేశంలోనే ఉన్నాయి కాబట్టి that's why we call India as a subcontinent. And what do you mean by Indian peninsula? Peninsula ante emi ledu. Simple. Remember, when you talk about island, what is an island? Island is a place which is surrounded by water from all the sides, or else by all the four sides. 4 వైపుల నుండి కూడా నీళ్ళ ద్వారా కప్పబడితే that we call it as an island. మనం ద్వీపం అంటాము. ఒకవేళ 3 వైపుల నుంచే నీటి ద్వారా కప్పబడి ఒకవైపు భూమి ఉంటే that we call it as peninsula. If any particular land is covered by water from 3 sides and on the 4th side it is land, that particular land we call it as peninsula. So when you talk about the India, like on the western side you have Arabia Sea, on the southern side you have Indian Ocean, on the eastern side you have Bay of Bengal, and that's why you have 3 water bodies: Bay of Bengal on the east, Arabian Sea on the west, and Indian Ocean on the south. And when you talk about what you have on the north, of course you have the mainland of India, and when you go to the top of India you again have continental landmass, right? And that's why it is called Indian Peninsula. And when you talk about India in particular, one thing you need to remember that there is a point in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. You can say the southernmost point of India. Normally when we talk about the southern tip of India, we say Kanyakumari is the southern tip of India. But remember, when you talk about southernmost point of India, even when you consider both Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar Islands as well, there is a place called Indira Point. And where is this Indira Point? It is in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which is the southernmost point. But unfortunately, this place Indira Point got submerged during the 2006 tsunami.